Today on Capitol Hill, House Democrats staged a sit-in on the chamber floor to protest Republicans' unwillingness to hold votes on gun control measures in the wake of the Orlando massacre. Joining us now to explain how this all happened and why, NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Luke Russert. So, Luke, take us through the day. This was not on my radar when I got up this morning.
Yeah.
Was this a surprise to everybody up there?
Absolutely. I can tell you how it sort of came together. Over the weekend, Representative Catherine Clark of Massachusetts reached out to John Lewis, the civil rights icon representative of Georgia, and said, look, we got to do something regarding the inability to get a gun control vote moving forward in the House of Representatives. Two of them went down last week, Democratic votes in the Senate, rather on Monday. They wanted to see what they could pull off in the House. They met with a larger group last night that came up with this idea of staging a sit-in on the House floor. It was blessed by the leadership. And as you guys know, and this is a political insider show, there is no filibuster mechanism in the House of Representatives. The party that is in the majority controls the happenings of the floor. So what ended up occurring was when the House went into recess after this sort of morning bang the gavel and singing the Pledge of Allegiance, John Lewis went to the floor and he said, we need to do something that's bold. We need to do something that brings attention to the cause. And literally about 40, 50 members of the House Democratic Caucus sat in the well of the House in the chamber. And they have been there since about 11:30 a.m. this morning, and there's no idea when they're going to leave.
Have they disrupted business that the majority wanted to get done, or is this all symbolic?
They have. There were votes scheduled today at 3:30 p.m., the usual House votes. Those have not been able to go forward. The House GOP is going to meet as a conference at 6 p.m. coming up to figure out what to do about this, because the Democrats say they will not leave until they're able to get votes on the Chris Murphy bill that would call for increased background checks, closing the gun show loophole, as well as the Dianne Feinstein, if you're on the terrorist watch list, you should not be able to purchase a gun, the no-fly, no-buy. So they got to figure out what the end is here. It's very interesting, though, guys, because C-SPAN's not broadcasting, because this is not a sanctioned avail. This is not the House floor being open. The only video feeds we're getting are members periscoping and tweeting pictures from the House floor. I can go in the gallery and watch and tweet it out, but there's no stenographer, there's no official record. They've essentially used its pirated images and video to get their word out. It's taken social media over by storm. No bill, no break. It's quite a wild thing to see. In 7 years here, I've never seen anything like it. I spoke to Ed Markey, senator from Massachusetts, who's been on Capitol Hill for 40 years. He's never seen anything like it. So they've certainly struck a chord with a lot of people around the country and within their own membership.
So, Luke, just war game it out. I mean, what do you think the likely denouement of this is? Is this going to be going on for another 24 hours, 36 hours, 48 hours, 2 hours? What?
I don't think they expected it to get this much attention, especially on a day when Donald Trump was giving that giving that speech, when Hillary Clinton was up here meeting with the House Democratic Caucus. But I can tell you that from members I spoke to, they're prepared at least to stay through the night. Maxine Waters of California is saying hell will freeze over before she leaves the House floor if they don't get a vote regarding gun control amendments. Get a little bit of insight here. I actually would argue it's easier for the House GOP to take these gun votes because they have the largest Republican majority since the 1920s. It's a very conservative body than it is for the Senate GOP, who already did it. So it's not necessarily a big deal if Ryan were to put forward this legislation in some component of an already existing bill. But it seems that they don't want to give, because Ryan's philosophy, I'm told by aides, is, look, we can't let the minority party just hijack the House floor whenever they're not getting their way and dictate what happens here. We have to set that would be setting terrible precedent. So it's an interesting standoff, and I think that now the Democrats feel invigorated, and they're definitely going to spend, at least I think, till the early hours here, unless Ryan comes out of the 6 p.m. meeting and says, okay, we'll move on something for you.
Yep. Luke Russert on Capitol Hill. Luke, thanks. Pretty interesting story. Joining us here in the studio, our colleague, senior White House correspondent Margaret Talev. So it's interesting when new things happen on Capitol Hill. I think Luke's right, though, that Ryan can't give in, because that would allow the minority, whenever they didn't like what was going on, effectively take over by saying, we're just going to sit on the floor until you give us our way. I don't think he can arrest John Lewis either. So.
It is a real leadership test for Paul Ryan, which is probably good ahead of the conventions, right, to get a test run. At least this is a leadership test against the other party instead of against his own party. But there's a couple really interesting elements to this. One is look, since the beginning of the Obama administration, the shooting in Tucson, Gabby Gifford, Sandy Hook, Newtown, everything that is Charleston, everything that's come since, and it takes an election year and a pivotal time to get these guys to figure out, hey, there actually is something, that we could do. John Lewis, Democrats holding hands, incredibly poignant. It's an incredibly poignant time, but why now and why never before? But it's very good, at least in the immediate rollout for Hillary Clinton. It takes attention away from Donald Trump bashing her. It gives her, it's like a total freebie for unity, for Democrats to come together around something that they all believe in.
Energy and emotion.
And it happens to come on a day when she's actually popping through to make a visit to Hill Democrats as well before she goes back out on the road.
So what do you think about that, about the overall kind of semiotics of the day and how this plays into the whole? It was a very heavily, as Casey Hunt said to us earlier today, it was the first day where it felt like two traditional presidential campaigns kind of running in totally kind of traditional ways. And then this completely unexpected thing pops up and kind of like, it kind of throws everything off kilter. Just talk about that, kind of what this does to the overall narrative of the day.
Yeah, it's really interesting because we knew that Clinton was going to be meeting with the Democrats, but also giving her speech in Raleigh. We knew that President Obama was going to be signing this bipartisan bill on EPA regulation, at the White House, where you saw many of the Democrats who could be very influential in Clinton's campaign, good surrogates, that sort of thing. Nancy Pelosi rushing between the Hill meetings and the White House to give her presentation, and kind of all in the middle of all of this, not entirely clear how much coordination there is. If this stuff wasn't all coordinated with the Clinton campaign, other than kind of last minute, hey, by the way, we're going to be doing this, it shows you how much potential they really would to get together and kind of leverage the White House and the Hill Democrats and Clinton if they could play nicely together and work well together.
Folks at the White House, Josh Earnest seemed pretty pleased by the aggressiveness of this. Are they going to rely on their Hill allies, or do you think the president may engage in more public campaigning to try to move this kind of legislation? God, it's a $64,000 question, right? I mean, this is one of these issues where in the last few years, he has tried to calibrate whether him getting personally involved would just screw it up more for the Democrats. And his goal at this point, in addition to getting another Democrat elected president, is to actually get something done. He'll get credit for it whether or not he was involved or not. If he makes it worse, he'll keep his hands off of it. Otherwise, he'll get involved.